previous class, but in the last class was about we got the technology conversation. So how technology affects architecture and what its partial manifestations or the tectonics. So how a building kind of unfolds because of the use of what kind of technology. And we talked about precast the last time, and we saw a few of those examples. And this time, as you can see on what Ainsley has just put up there, he's going to be talking about concrete. So a very very critical technology or we look at concrete more like today as just a material in that visual thing with those it's such a cliche where you see those the joints of the shuttering and those holes which are there, and that's the idea of concrete which you'll have. But what concrete actually does as a material and its possibilities, and then so because of what how architecture changed and how its spatial aspects change is a very critical thing. So Ainsley is going to talk about the concrete. Yeah, Ainsley.
Okay. Good afternoon to all of you. I love giving lectures and pushing us to actually prepare for us. I was just talking to Kaid yesterday. It gives us a kind of thought process to relearn what we had learned years ago. And also, there's a certain level of maturity which you revisit some of the buildings. So today, I'm going to talk about concrete, and basically, it's not the precast concrete which I'm talking about. It's going to talk about in situ concrete, and I'm going to pose a few examples for you to see the development of this material and how the form has affected architecture. So yeah, let's go ahead. So some of the topics, some of the few slides which I'm going to talk about are something which you all have probably heard about in structures, but it's kind of revisiting it. But it's important that you'll understand the material before you think of the form of architectural space. So the first thing is when you look at concrete, there are three elements in it. Okay, one is Portland cement, which when mixed with water becomes a paste. Okay, and with aggregate it hardens, and you get what is called concrete. Okay, now you'll probably learned in your structures when you talk about the water, there's a certain particular ratio of the water cement ratio is what we call, so that you get a concrete which is strong enough, but at the same time there's a certain sense of workability. So when you cast columns or you cast various kind of things, there's a certain workability to it, so that it kind of makes it easier to kind of mold into various forms. And if you look at architects, we are always engaged with how do you kind of put a roof over the space? Okay. Do you do a trabeated system, which is essentially a post and lintel? Aarti, is my slide changing?
Yes, it's
Aarti?
at
Yeah.
hello.
There's
Yeah, you
two
are at how
images,
do you
right?
put a roof over the
Yeah.
space? It's on the
Yeah. Yeah.
image.
Okay, okay, fine. So you talk about a post and lintel system, which are these vertical elements and the horizontal elements, and an arcuated system, which is essentially an arch. Okay, so as architects, we are always concerned about this. You know, what is the enclosure and what is the roof? And these are the two basic kind of ways in which you can look at it. And over a period of time, there's always innovations in technology to reduce the mass of the material. Okay. And I will show you through examples how this has been done. Okay. But this is our concern as architects. Like when you talk about any space, you always look at how you roof it. And there are these kind of two ways and you look at it. So historically, concrete was kind of an invention by the Romans. Okay, and basically, though the concrete made at that time is considerably weaker than what we have today, but it kind of used three kind of materials. One is slake lime and volcanic ash, uh, which is mixed together to create a sticky paste called palozona. And this was then combined with a stone which was available in, it was basically a volcanic igneous rock, which was called tuff, which was very light. Okay. And the beauty of this material is that when it was, it could set quickly, even when it was submerged in seawater. So you had a lot of the architecture which was built by the Romans in terms of their baths, their piers, their harbors, etc., etc. And when scientists analyzed the material, they realized that the sea water, which was there, you would dissolve the volcanic ash, and it would lead to a new material called aluminum torbomorite. Okay, and this kind of made it. This kind of material made the concrete much more durable. Okay, and that's what made buildings in Rome uh, much more durable than what we have today. Okay, so this is a little bit of the kind of the composition of the Roman concrete. And what they essentially built, and one of the iconic buildings of that time is, of course, I think all of you all know this, it's the Pantheon. Okay, and uh, you will see uh, that when they actually put this building together, it wasn't just a building in itself. There were a lot of, read the history of it. There are lots of reasons why it was oriented in a particular way, etc., etc. The various kind of the emperors who kind of built this building. But what is most important in this building, how they understood the material they used for building, and how it changed. The section changed right from the bottom to the top. So if you look at the Pantheon, okay, it is very geometrical in shape. Okay, and if you look at the architecture of that time, you will find that geometry, especially in these large buildings, has a very important role to play, because the forces which are acting on the building itself um, create a sense of equilibrium, because they are opposite to each other. The geometry itself is one of the key factors which helps this. Okay, so you have a very kind of strict geometry which is there in the building, and if you look at the section of the building, you will realize that it adheres to this geometry just to resolve the forces which are acting within the building itself. Okay, so that's the section of the building. And if you look at it, it is basically a sphere of a diameter of 43 meters. Okay, so one floor of a building is about 3 meters. So if the diameter is 43 meters, you can understand how tall this building is. Okay, so if you look at the date in which it was built, okay, you'll realize that it is much taller than most of our, buildings in many of our two-tier towns, etc., etc. But the beauty of this is, because of its geometry, all the forces were resolved. Because of the knowledge of the material, okay, the forces were resolved, and the forces which were right at the top were actually taken into the base and the foundation of the building. Okay, this is in situ concrete, so it was cast in sight. Okay, so there were technological innovations to kind of make this happen, to make this building what it is. I would just like to do a little kind of thing where I do a Google map view of this building. Okay, so that's the scale of the building, and I will not spend too much time about the Google map of it, but you will understand that the scale of the building is this. Okay, and that's what you see. The dome actually being behind, this is the pediment which is in front. Each of these columns are in granite, which are about 11 meters high. Okay, there were ways in which it was brought down to the site, etc., etc. So that was the way in which, and I think you can spend your time and then go into the building and whatever, so to see what this building is all about and the context. Okay, I will not spend time on that. Okay, so that's the kind of scale at which this building was built. And there are forces. Okay, there are forces which act on everything because of gravity. Okay, um, and these forces, which are the longitudinal forces and the hoop forces, okay, which act in any dome, have to be resolved. Okay, and the Romans actually invented a kind of thing which they called a relieving arch, okay, which is within the building itself, within the masonry of the building itself, and then the loads of the dome are then pushed onto these relieving arches and then taken into the footing into the ground. So the depth of this footing is about 4.5 meters. Okay, so it's about the height from our first floor to the ground level. That's the depth of the footing built at that time. Okay, I will give you all the dimensions so that you just understand the scale of this project. And those are the relieving arches which are there within the building. Okay, and you can actually understand that the forces are taken within there and they're brought down. I'll show you another drawing of it. And these are little openings which are there across. You can see that here. Okay, that's the way in which they actually put the formwork and the shuttering for the dome. Okay, so that the shuttering, the scaffolding and the formwork did not come from the ground itself. It came from this level, and then the dome was constructed. So those are the relieving arches which you can see. Okay, which transfer the load to points. Okay, these are the ways in which it was transferred, and that's the dome which is then constructed with this kind of formwork. So that's it in section. Those are the openings through which the formwork was sent in through. This is the shuttering which is done. Okay. And this width here is 1.2 meters, while here it is about 6 meters, I think. Yeah, I'll just see the exact dimension. Or 2.5 meters, I think. I'll just see that there's another drawing of that. Yeah, but that's the way it was constructed. So, I mean, when you actually talk about building a building, it's not just the form of it, it's the way in which you actually look at the shuttering, you actually look at the scaffolding, you actually look at the centering which is required, and then understanding the forces and understanding the properties of a material to kind of construct what it is. And that's what you get. So this is the initial part where there are 7 steps which go up there, and then you get the rest of it, and you will see how the kind of the nature of the material changes right from here till the top. And that's the space you get. Please go back to the Google Street View whenever you get time, and you will understand the scale of this building built at that time. Okay, you can see how tiny the people are and the oculus which is there. And this is not just patterns. Okay, these are not just patterns. This is actually to reduce the quantum of material and to also take care of those hoop forces which I was talking about, or the longitudinal forces which have to come into this and go down into the ground. So that's the kind of space which is created with the oculus which brings in light into the space. And that's the kind of dimensions which you have. Yeah, so it's approximately, I was right in my memory, it's approximately 6 meters wide, and the foundation is 4.5 meters deep. Okay, so it's about the Kamla Raja height from the first floor down onto the ground. And you see the nature of material which changes right from here till the top. Okay. Um, and the kind of density which the material can take. Okay, so you see the density out here is 1350 kg per meter cube. Okay, and it goes on changing till you get something much more denser here. The tough the volcanic stone, which was kind of something which you can say is similar to that aerated concrete blocks, which kind of is lightweight, is in the upper part. These are the 7 steps which I was talking about. Okay, which has clay chippings, etc., etc. With and the nature of the material changes right from the bottom to the top to actually give an opening which is 9 meters wide. So it's approximately as wide as your bedroom size. Okay, if you draw a circle within your bedroom, that's the master bedroom today. Master bedrooms or whatever bedroom is 10 feet by 10 feet. So that's 3 meters. So it's thrice the size of that. Okay, that's the scale of this opening which brings in light, and that's the width of this, which is about 43 meters. Okay, so that means from here to here, okay, if you say 3 meters per floor, okay, that's about 11 floor height and another 11 floor height. So the space inside is about 22 floor height of a building. So if you see a 7-story building, it can easily fit into this space. Okay, so that's the scale at which they build. And you understand that there's a certain knowledge at that time about the quality of the material, the way the scaffolding has to be done. So the scaffolding was put through these openings and then constructed here. So you're not actually putting your centering and your for the dome right from the base. It's from there. Okay, it's kind of suspended above that space, and that's what's created. Okay. But over a period of time, in the 19th, late second half of the 19th century, uh, there was this invention about reinforced concrete. And it was these two horticulturists, Lambert and Monnier, from France, who kind of were actually doing planters and other appliances. And what they realized is that putting a reinforcement into concrete actually makes it a much stronger material. Okay. And Auguste Perret, okay, if you remember my lecture to your last semester, where Corbusier was working as a part-time in this guy's office, okay, so he was the one who actually kind of utilized concrete, the reinforced concrete in buildings. Okay, and initially it was always used by engineers, okay, to kind of make bridges, etc., etc. So even if you go into the history books and you actually look at what these horticulture is this, one of them constructed a bridge. Okay, and they put reinforcement in the right places, where because they realized that the reinforced the cement concrete, okay, cannot take tension, hence the steel came in. Okay, and then you have Corbusier coming in, and he does this simple kind of thing where you have like have a pilotis, and you kind of have the beam which goes across. Okay, so it's a very simple form, and then he starts actually trying to use it in Rocha. Okay, where he actually has a curved surface, but there are lots of beams going through. But you see, as they understand the technology which was there, they understand the kind of forces which are there. They actually put metal at places which were in tension, and hence the material started becoming much more and more slender. So if you look at the roof, okay, it's just 6 centimeters thick. Okay, if you remember my presentation last term, I showed you drawings of that. But um, the other engineers who I presume you'll have studied in your structures last time talked about shells. Okay, and the shell is basically a system wherein it's a three-dimensional curve where one dimension is significantly smaller as compared to the other two. And you see many of these kind of engineers spending a lot of time to kind of work on these kind of shells, but it wasn't actually used as very intensely as an architectural roofing material. Okay, it is only later, so you can see all these engineers toying with it right from 1950s, etc., etc. It's only later on that you have architects. So these are some of the works by the engineers. Okay, some of them were engineers, architects, etc., etc. So you see that right from 34 to 35 to 51, the engineers were really exploring with this material. But architects then started looking at this idea of shells as a roofing material. And I will talk about one project, okay, which is very much in our context, which is in Mumbai. This was the Our Lady of Salvation Church by Charles Correa, okay, in Dadar. And the thing is that basically, if you look at the plan, it is a church, but he's actually reworked what a church is. I think you'll kind of know the plans of a church, and there are certain spaces like a nave, a baptistry, an oratory, a sanctuary, etc., etc., which are there. It's very linear in its form. It can be cruciform, as you'll have seen in some of our site visits. But Korea looks at this as a very important way in which he has changed the typology of the church. Okay, and he's created these series of spaces. Okay, and along with these spaces, like if you look at this nave and you see the kind of scale of this nave, you will realize that he's adjacent to it, he has an open courtyard. And similarly with the sanctuary, the baptistry, the oratory, there are these open spaces which are equal to the covered spaces. Okay. Korea very consciously uses this. This is a high traffic road. He builds a high wall and he actually creates these spaces. He imagines this to be like the catacombs in Rome. Okay. Wherein the tombs of many of the people who are martyred earlier in Rome are very similar to that. So he looks at this as those covered spaces, but he actually uses this as a climatic device. Now, why am I talking about this? I think it's important that you understand that architecture does other things as well, but technologically, we are talking about something else here in this building. Okay, and what he does, he actually has these squares, okay, and then he creates a roof which is essentially a shell which is sitting on a square plan. Okay, that's the belfry which is there. So all the elements of a church are there, and he has these huge doors which open up into the courtyards. And that's the space when the project was completed. Okay, uh, it was in rough cement concrete. Okay, so it kind of has that rawness. Um, if you look at the pulpit, it is actually a block of granite. The altar again is a block of granite, very hardy, etc., etc. But of course, the people didn't like it, and Korea then had to accept the fact that they all painted this white. Okay, so this is one of the other domes. The paintings on the in the skylight are by M.F. Hussain. Okay, and that's what you have. So from that very hardy kind of rough kind of way in which he looked at it as catacombs, you kind of have this space which is now painted white by the people. And But let's talk about how we look at the construction. So I remember taking you all to Mandu, and if you'll remember Rani Rupmati's pavilion, where the idea was how do you fit a square, how do you cover the square with a dome, okay? And these red points are basically where the columns are, where if sorry, where if this is A and that is B, okay, this is the hypotenuse, and this side and that side and that side and that side and that side are equal. And if you remember what we had sketched out when we were in Mandu, you'll realize that to an architect, we'd realize that this is wider than this. So if you draw an elevation of it, and then slowly the kind of spacing reduces and reduces and reduces, and there are various ways. If you go to Ahmedabad and you look at the Jami Masjid and you look up to the ceiling, you'll realize that they've actually used stone to kind of reduce the spaces. And each era and each dynasty kind of uses a different way. But this is something which I thought is important for you all to understand, because Korea too has a square, the nave, which is a square, okay, and you have the skylight, which actually is a circle, but in plan, when you look at it from the top, will be an ellipse, uh, and it's a circle which then sits on a square. And if you try to look at it, and you say, how the hell can you put a circular skylight on a square plan? And then you have to observe the lines of the shuttering very carefully. Okay, you have to observe the lines of the shuttering very carefully, and this is what you see. So at the lower part of the square, you get these large shuttering pieces, okay, which are the standard plates which are available for construction. And then later on, you have these more longitudinal kind of planks, okay, which are put across above that. And when you actually come to the circular skylight, you have these small pieces which are put together to make the circle. Okay, you have to understand that even when this shell was designed, this idea, it was at a time in the 70s. Okay, so there were no computers. This kind of idea was worked out with Mahendra Raj, and it was taken to IIT Bombay for analysis, and then this shell was designed. Okay, so I've just removed the kind of lines to kind of help you see it, and those are the lines which are there. Yeah. So essentially, this is what you see. The lower part of it is made out of these larger shuttering plates, okay, while the middle part of it is made out of shuttering boards, and then smaller pieces which actually make the square. Okay, so I think as architects, we have to understand a simple plan of a square. And when you get a circular opening on the top, how do you kind of resolve this? And how do you kind of actually put it in? And I think last term we did quantities and specifications and BOQs. You have to understand that this is all part of what we have to think about. But in this case as well, okay, now this is some later drawing which shows what Korea was kind of asked to do to kind of make this building not as brutal as it seems to be. But what I'm trying to talk about here is not that. I'm trying to talk about the same forces which we saw in the Pantheon. Okay, when you actually have this space, there are going to be those hoop forces which will cause it to open out. Okay, and how does Korea resolve it? So he has these large fin-like things with a huge trough which becomes like a gutter which brings down the rainwater. Okay, so that's the one which gives it stability. So that's the gutter which goes right across. I will show you some images from outside and the top, which kind of take the all the forces, because obviously when you actually talk about a roof which sits at this, which is a shell, okay, there will be forces, not only the weight of the concrete, there'll be forces for it to open out, and how does it actually sit across? And you, that's what you see. Of course, this is a more recent photograph, and this is the kind of gutter which runs across, but you can see the depth of it. Okay, so this actually gets a good bearing for it to sit. That's the first courtyard which you enter, and that's the shuttering when it was under construction. Okay, so you can clearly see the larger plates here, okay, the shuttering plates. Then you can see these smaller pieces here, and then the very tiny pieces to kind of form the circular opening on the top. And then you have reinforcement in place. Please understand, it was in 1970s that this was all being done. And that's the inside completed image of it, the outside, the skylight. Okay, he initially wanted it to be to be a space to exchange the hot air from within outside. There were leakages, and once an architect leaves a building, then lots of changes are made. That's the skylight from the outside. Okay, and that's the gutter which you can see, the huge gutter which actually supports this whole shell roof which actually sits there. That's from inside once again. But over a period of time, technology has advanced. And what I'm showing you now is kind of a research project done by people in researchers in ETH Zurich. Okay. Um, where here we have, like, if you look at the Pantheon, okay, to what you did in Salvasau Church, to what you're doing now, okay, you will see that initially it was very intuitive. Okay, so the size of the members was huge. Okay, right from 6 meters to 1.2 meters in the Pantheon to Korea's shell, which is now 6 centimeters thick, to something here which is 3 centimeters to 12 centimeters. But in this kind of laboratory which they are doing in Zurich, there's a whole lot of digital kind of an empirical information which allows you to actually take the forces only through members which can take the necessary forces. So steel is put at very specific places. So this is actually a video, but I've clicked snapshots of it because I know by streaming it live, it's not going to be so easy. But this is a video which is actually there. You can actually go to YouTube and see it. And this is the process which they followed. Okay. So basically, using digital technology, you can actually understand what the kind of loading is there, where the material has to be placed, and this is the kind of stuff which is there. So you have a scaffold which is up in place. You have these edge beams which hold a cable net false work. Okay. Then they put a fabric shuttering, they put textile reinforcement, and they spray it with concrete. Okay, so from the Pantheon, where you have a thickness which is 6.5, 6 meters to 1.2 meters, you're coming down to 12 centimeters at the edge to 3 centimeters at the center. So this is the lightweight framework which is in place using net of tension steel cables. That's a view of it from underneath. Okay. Those are the edge beams which are in place. The polymer fiber, which is then stretched across the net. Now, it's all possible because you have digital kind of digital kind of technology to compute the geometry of this fiber, etc., etc. When the fiber is in place, you'll know how much it has to be stretched, and that's the fiber which is then placed, and then you have the polymer which is then put on top of it. And everything is very precise. Okay. And nothing is left to intuitive logic. And it's so calculated, and this is when they're spraying the concrete on top of it. And concrete, in the next slide, you'll see that it cannot be too runny as well as it cannot be too dry. So, because when there are steep surfaces, I mean, if you're actually doing a roof like Korea, then automatically you have to be careful that the concrete does not slide off. So when we are doing pitch roofs, etc., in architecture, we make sure that there are various stoppers and you do it at different points in time. Yeah. And the beauty of this is that the reduction of the material is the key. Okay, so from very thick kind of members to very thin kind of members which are there. You can definitely visit this on YouTube. They're removing the edge beams now that the concrete has set. And this was actually built for a penthouse and then placed out there. That's what it is, ETH Zurich. And then it's moved to a penthouse. And then they added in the photovoltaic cells on the roof. And they made a facade which so that the kind of solar energy which is captured is more than what the house consumes. So that's the kind of drawing of it. So this is the penthouse which is there. There's an entry, there's a kitchen, dining, two bedrooms, washrooms, and a little terrace. And there's a floor there which is an underlaying floor. Then you have this kind of thing which is in place, and then you have photovoltaic cells which are placed on top, and that's the plan of it. So that unit actually sits in these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 places, and it covers the whole penthouse. Okay, so the scale of the project is such that you use a lot of engineering and precision technology to kind of reduce the thickness of the material to kind of create this space. Yeah. So that's all I have to say. Are there any questions?
So yeah, so yeah, so we've nominated like always 5 students have been, so they put on their cameras. It's there in that text. Oh, you are maybe not on the. So there's Nachiket Chavan, Ishan Desai. Hi Shivam. Shivam is on his camera. Shivam, Sana Nalwala, and Janvi Lavate. Ishan, your hair is growing longer and longer. It's the second semester. So yeah. So we have.
He's trying to compete with Sana.
Hello. Yeah, actually, I
Yeah.
don't have
See.
camera in my laptop, so I cannot
Well,
switch
last time
around.
also you didn't have. You have to arrange, no? Then in 1 week. Are you going to do the whole
Just a
semester without camera, like Nachiketa?
just a second, just a second. I'll arrange that.
Okay, next
You
time
can
you
put
can.
it from your phone, na? From your phone, you can use a camera. Okay. Any questions? What do you have to say? I mean, this is a quick overview. I mean, I could have gone into a lot of this, and last time I remember I overshot my time, so there's no time for discussion. So I
No,
just
this time it was,
reviewed
yeah, well
it.
managed. Time was Ainsley.
I was concerned about that. Yeah.
I just had an observation. So for the last project that you showed Ainsley, so it was like so high tech, and it was. I think you said that at one point it was made and then moved to a different place. So how is that in situ and not precast? Because like the technology
Because
that's used over there is also as high tech as.
actually, the thing is that it was made in a laboratory. Okay, it was made in a laboratory, cast in site. Now it could have been actually done. It's the whole roof which was there. I mean, if you look at precast, there are panels and there are members which are actually put together, and there's a fixing detail, etc., etc. So yes, in that sense, you can say it was made separately and made at a different location and then placed. But they're not individual members. It's the whole roof, and you saw it is not like a factory process where there's a module which is then repeated several times. So it is an experimental kind of a thing. So that's why it was done in Zurich, where you have all the technology to kind of determine this, the forces, etc., and then put in place. Yes, but definitely it's not like a panel, which is a module which is repeated, and each of the modules kind of fix into each other.
Adding to what Ainsley said, actually, there was actually other installations also made in Spain. I remember last time I was making a shell structure, and so what they do, Rhino had came up with a new thing as Rhino Vault, where they mark how the loading is happening on these shell structures, on various types of shells, and then they make a grid on it, and then actually some guy had done it where they make smaller grids and then make the scaffoldings at those points on the grid. So for a smaller level, as Ainsley showed, this could the fact think work with these small fiber net, but at a larger scale, those grid could have also worked, and it was like a temporary installation, and then they removed it from there. So
So there are
yeah, it's
lots of
actually developing. It's
examples.
very interesting.
Yeah, there are lots of examples like this. If you go to the net, if I'm not mistaken, there's also fabric, concrete, etc. But the point is not the kind of form and whatever. The point I'm trying to make is that right from the Pantheon to what we do nowadays, there's a certain empirical data which comes to our help. Okay, and because of that we can reduce the thickness of the quantum of the material used, and the kind of nature of material is very particular because of the forces which are traveling there. So I mean, in first year you all did a structural exercise where you did these four lines of forces. So you have to understand that in today's day and age, if you understand this as architects, okay, in this case also it's more of the fantasy of a structural engineer. But in that earlier slide which I showed you, like Eero Saarinen did this TWA terminal, and there's a Portuguese pavilion done by Alvaro Siza, yeah, where he's actually suspended concrete as a canopy. Now, that's where we architects have to understand the nature of the material, the lines of forces, and how we can reduce it to our advantage. So it does not become the indulgence of a structural engineer to show that this is what concrete can do. I think this is where we have to kind of this. So our concern should be, how do you cover a space? Okay, how do you cover a space? Will you use a post and lintel kind of thing, or would you actually use an architrated system? Okay, and then what do you use? I mean, there are shells, now you have this fabric, whatever, whatever. Yeah. Anyone else?
Yeah, as you pointed out, it's pretty interesting to see that, where concrete was used before and the thickness used to go on for like a meter, it's now reduced to just like 3 centimeters by pure technology. It's very interesting because so last semester we had studied concrete, but we had studied it via the lens of materiality. So we were talking about the Bruder Cross Chapel and stuff. But here, when we get to see the sort of technology which comes into play while making these sort of structures, it's pretty interesting. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what Sana is saying is interesting. That last semester we saw it in the material in a different way, and this time it's less about the material and more about the technology. So even if I see the three examples which Inslee has shown, the last two have been shells in some ways, and what it does to the spatial outputs which happen, right? And it would be interesting if, I don't know, one of you want to talk about, did you have any spatial insight on it in relationship with some other material, some other technologies, say like steel or or stone? Because these are building technologies, right? We're building systems in some way. So Janvi or Nachiket, if you will have any. I mean, you can say something else also. It's not like that.
Yeah, so can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we can.
Yes, we can.
Yes, so actually adding to Sana's point, actually, so last time we just saw it, and this time we are working on the the different materials. This time we are working on like a kochi, so the different materials. The we are right now there is a like laterite soil stone. There is so we are working on different materials, how they are working, how the spanning is working over there, and the different materials we are exploring right now. And also the actually the church that Salvation Church, I actually visited there, so I know I actually saw that the scale, the prayer room, that there is a this is the very actually a long prayer room, the how they actually projected their ceiling over there and how the ventilation is working. I actually saw this, so it's like a pretty nice actually. And this time we are actually exploring a new material that we learned in our last time. So this is actually pretty interesting. This is.
Actually, Ainsley, the Salvation Church, no, the Portuguese church, what Janvi has brought up, I think it's a very special example, but because that particular spatial experience couldn't have been created in any other material, in any other technology. It's another matter today that somebody might do it in steel and create a structural system, and then you clad it. But this is a system which is a purely kind of coming out of concrete and that casting technology, and so you get a spatial manifestation of that kind. So I think that's very important to understand that.
Yeah, and definitely. And the thing is that you see that I would say that this is like an experiment which Korea undertook. And then if you go to Bharat Bhavan, he uses this same kind of roof there. Okay, so he's kind of experimented, and I was just looking at the timeline for this lecture. I was looking at the timeline and I saw that this precedes the Bharat Bhavan. So you automatically see that many of us architects, we do a lot of interiors works, we do experiments, we do smaller projects, and then our learnings from that actually go and manifested somewhere else. If you look at works of Louis Kahn and whatever, and if you look at they actually built 1:1 mock-ups on site to see that what they have proposed. Or if you read Frank Lloyd Wright, when he actually did this kind of mushroom column, he actually built a 1:1 and he loaded it, etc., etc. So you have to understand that these are kind of they're taking big risks. Okay, they're taking big risks to kind of understand material. And believe me, it only takes a trained eye of an architect to see the shuttering pattern. Okay, and that's what your eyes should be trained when you go to spaces. You should be able to, if you see a rough, like as Kaid said, that tada undo with that kind of shuttering plate with those holes. But if you go to places like this and you see rough concrete, and if you keep your eye open, you will understand how an architect has kind of visualized it, because you'll know you'll have to do shuttering, you'll have to do steel, blah 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 blah. Yeah. So these are experiments which have been successful. Of course, the people hated the building when it was not painted from within, because Korea imagined them as the tombs in Rome. But over a period of time, of course, they've spent a bomb. They can't just demolish it the next day. But yeah, over a period of time, they've kind of got used to it.
Probably not related to it, but like I live in Matunga, and when I was small, I saw the Don Bosco Church and the St. Joseph Church. So the idea of using stones to make these big arches with the dome in the center and that cruciform plan. And the area, this church is called as the Portuguese church, so the area is also called as the Portuguese church wala area. So
Yeah.
I used to pass by that place, but I never understood that this was the church because of those domes and these various courtyards. So even I went in when I was very little, but those busy street ke beach mein, there's this whole place where there's this common area for people, and this church not resembling the common form of church was quite an interesting thing to it was very astonishing for me at that point. Okay, something such form could also become like a church.
So
It was possible because of the materiality actually. Because the idea of looking at those huge stone masonry and these thick columns with big gates, like wooden arch doors are happening, and then you enter into this grand church. So that transition was quite stark.
So you have to understand, initially, like if the name Portuguese church was because there was an original church which was built by the Portuguese there. Okay, in the 70s, that old church was demolished and this church was built in its place. So the name has stuck on, but you have a very modern kind of a church, and you see how the thinking of architecture has changed over a period of time. Okay, so if I'm not mistaken, that was built in the early 1500s, 1600s, and now you're building in 1970, where the concerns are very different. You're talking about a kind of experience when you get into space. You're talking about spatial kind of choreography, which kind of replicates something else in another place. The people initially hated that church. Okay, because they lost that beautiful pediment of what they had. But so that's another issue. And but you have to understand what he has done in terms of space making. How do you roof a space as architects? You don't just make dabbas, okay? And he's not used the shell like Felix Candela. Okay, they did the experiments, but he's actually used it very differently. So you have to understand. So we as architects, probably I'm introducing you to what's being done in Zurich, but you as young architects may use that kind of technology to your advantage and create whatever you need to create. Okay, so I mean that's where you have to be excited and motivated, and don't just relegate to dabbas and whatever and say that this is my building. Yeah, but tomorrow don't just start putting all these chamfered dooms on all your projects. Nachiketa, I'm waiting for something from you.
Like we learned a lot for making roofs in our second year toss while we were making parking lot parking lots with the
Oh yeah,
concrete.
you all were the parking lot gang. Okay, okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
So like we learned a lot about concrete that time also. Like how like in mass structure only we were like went from 5 centimeter to like 0.5 centimeter. Like the corners, they were like very what you say, like they were the very sampled ones corners. Like our roofs were that kind, and a lot of other guys also like so we learned a lot from at that time only, but at that time we didn't think like we didn't maybe know like it was going to be used in future reference also, like this, like what we
But
are
uh,
talking today.
but 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 understand what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say that all these structural engineers and probably what you did in your structures class were kind
Yeah,
of the program which we gave you all at that point of time was 6 cars and 10 bicycles or something like that.
yeah,
Very loose kind of program. But when you
it was very
actually talk about a church, okay, how do you kind of use this kind of element to create a roof is something which is important. So how does an architect use it? It's not a structural marvel in that sense. So it's creating space. It is a structural kind of innovation, but we are
yeah,
using it for architecture, and that's important. So I mean, you like if you look at Eero Saarinen's TWA terminal, fantastic project, okay,
yeah,
built at a particular time, and the idea is that you're actually using it as a material for space making, okay, and it's not like a technological kind of experiment which you're doing. So in that case, that Zurich kind of thing is was a technological experiment. Now,
yeah,
as a young gen of architects, how would you kind of use that and say that I can build a roof which is 3 centimeters, but it is all about space making? Okay, it's all about the quality of light. It's about understanding what the choreography of space is for a particular activity, maybe for your coaching project. So that's what you'll need to start thinking about. And of course, all the shuttering details would change, and something like Pantheon, you actually put the shuttering which is suspended in the this. In Korea's project, it would be from the floor. Okay, so
yeah,
and then you saw a completely different way in which this whole thing shuttering process was done because of empirical information, because of computational science, which can actually tell you what the forces are. Because you have to understand, when you cast a slab, automatically the load goes on increasing. Okay, so when you have a fabric which is a shuttering, then you have to understand the weight which actually comes on. So you all were the batch who actually did those POP shells in first year.
yeah, we
Yeah,
were,
but those were
yeah,
all innovations in terms of just understanding form. Okay, but we didn't give you a architectural space and how do you put a roof for that. Yeah, so that's the challenge as architects. That's where we come in. And it's not just building these fancy kind of innovative roofs and shells and whatever. And all of this is in situ work. That means it's on site, it's poured in place, and it's not something like which is manufactured in a as modules and put together. Yeah.
yeah.
Anyone else besides these five? The only five are allowed to speak.
Kev, you're on mute.
Sorry, yeah. No, these are the ones who are supposed to trigger the discussion. Anybody can speak easily, of course.
I think now these 5 should choose another 5. Now we'll have fun. I think it's a chance here because here's the fun part of the class, no? Someone who you know is sleeping during the class, you can ask them the question and have some fun. We'll take their case. Yeah, Sana, you're going to nominate Dia, your friend.
And
Okay.
AD
Huh?
partner. No, AD partner is
AD
not
partner
AD
also.
partner.
How did that
No,
happen?
AD partner is not Dia. AD partner is Lajja. Sana and
Yeah.
Lajja.
Say any of you. Ishan, you want to nominate the other Ishan? Is he around?
Hey, Ishan was
There are
there.
two parts. Two parts can comment also. Where's Park Square? Nothing?
Hi.
Yeah,
Hi.
say Parks. Say. Have fun, yeah. This is a cool class. There's no assignment. You have to just give your gyan and get out. Yeah, say Park. You just said hi to me and then where?
There's like particular stuff that I want to talk about, but like we've had like this knowledge of concrete for a while, and it's been interesting how it has taken form over the time. So though I do find that like I've had the discussion last year with Manoj as well that earlier in the times when concrete was a new material, it was like a thing to explore, and there was like an innovation going on through architecture. Right now, it just feels like it has been existing for a long while, and there's no new material that we can explore with. So that's probably like just my thinking, but like yeah,
There's no new material you're saying, or what is it? What are you saying?
no new material in the sense that like concrete became like widely available and widely used. Like there's no such material right now that is being uh, industrialized or like globalized in such a massive manner. So it's
So by default, it's become a material of choice by architects. That's what you're trying to say.
um, yeah.
What about the other part? Where's Dia? Dia, do you know that today you get technology where light can actually be transmitted through concrete?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. The luminescent ones, na, which they sort of get folded.
No, we actually did a workshop where this guy came from Chennai and he actually showed you where you can have light travel through concrete. So, I mean, there are lots of kind of things. I'm talking about it because I remember your first year project where you uh, you actually used that sugar to make those
Yeah, I
plates.
remember. Yeah, you'd asked me to look into the not bioluminescent, sorry. It's kind of translucent also, na? It gives a sort of translucent effect to
Yeah.
the panels.
But what I'm trying to say is that we as architects should actually think of how we can use it. So I mean, part in that sense, concrete has been there, but I mean it's we who have to take it further. And if we just take it as a default material, like what you see in Mumbai, most of our housing, etc. Some of us are trying things by inclining it, etc., etc. Um, it also requires, like when you're doing something like what you're doing in ETH Zurich, it talks about a certain precision. And out here in India, we are very much in the chalta hai attitude. So if you'll have class at 1:30, you'll come in at 1:40. But in Zurich, they wouldn't tolerate this thing. If that's the precision. So if you have to you have to cast that, okay, you cannot do it 19 20. 19 20 nahi chalta hai wahan pe. So then automatically, because then they know the loading is precise, everything is precise, otherwise it'll fail. So I mean, it requires a different attitude from us as architects to kind of be more professional about it, and then we can actually create something. concrete, like Parth, like you're saying, concrete has become a default material का चलता है ना, थोड़ा ज़्यादा डालो, थोड़ा एक सलिया कम डालो, the building won't fall. That's the kind of attitude right now. But if you start doing work like what that experiment showed, then you cannot remove one less reinforcement. It has to be precise. Yeah. So चलता है नहीं चलेगा. Yeah. And that's why we have to better ourselves and become much more sharper about this. Anyone else, or we just go on talking like this?
I think we
Hi,
can. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
this is Dada Ishan. I had a opinion that we call it a shell structure. So it has a very distinct form, and it itself is a form itself is a structure in itself. So how do we justify it as a roof? Like in some projects, the like one you showed. The penthouse had these normal rooms, and over that they had this shell. So I personally feel that it looks very odd. Like you have those rooms, and then this completely, it looks very alien that you have this shell on top of that. Instead of that, if the shell itself becomes the kind of the envelope, and all the building is in its form, then it works better.
100%. I kind of agree with you. I mean, that's where we have to come in as architects. I mean, this was done in 2017, and now we're in 2020. So obviously, I mean, that understanding would have come through. It's like what the engineers did. Okay, where you look at Novi and all these guys when they made these shells, they were shells for the sake of being shells. But that's what I'm saying. Where architects start using them, there's a unison between the plan as well as what the roof is about. Korea in this case is successful because it talks about a particular quality of light for a space. It talks about that kind of a thing. So it's successful in that sense. But yes, of course, definitely when you're actually talking about something as slim as that, it should become part of the space as well. I wouldn't call Doshi's Gufa as a pure shell because we know what is there, but I mean, Kaid and I were studying at that point of time and watching it grow from the ground. But yes, in that case, the flow of it is also curved, and he actually has the walls which are curved. But once again, the program is kind of loose. It's like it was kind of planned as a space for Hussein to come and spend a day or two, and it wasn't that functional as such. But definitely, like Korea's project or Bharat Bhavan, where he actually does that. Um, it does have all those kind of understandings of what the plan form should be, how should it change, what is the walls, and then what's the roof. So yes, I agree with you with that comment of yours. Amit, you have anything to say? Amit is a new student, huh? So you'll have not met him also. Amit, you have met any of your friends?
Yeah, we met him.
Okay, you all met him. Okay. Anything else? Are you done or what's the thing?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that like for our design projects also, or like for generally,
Who is this?
we
Yeah,
don't
put
think
your camera on. Put your
Devishi.
camera on.
Yeah.
Devashi. Yeah, switch your camera on.
Yeah, it's on. I think it'll come in a bit.
There. Okay. Okay. I
One
remember your
second.
face. Yeah, she's sitting in a nice park. Where she gone? Okay,
Oh, no, I'm here.
come
Hi.
say what you have to say.
Yeah, I was just saying that.
You have become very soft.
Yeah, we can't hear you, Devashi. Suddenly unaudible. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
You are
Thora,
very
it's
soft.
fuzzy.
Hello. Uh, hello. Is it
I
Your
can
audible?
barely hear you.
Your volume has gone down, Devish.
It's full on my end.
Now
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
coming.
yeah. Now you're better. Now you're better. So keep your
Yeah.
camera off. It's okay.
I was just saying that, like, whenever we do our design projects or anything, like, we don't think of concrete as something, like, we're aware of precast wall panels and sprayed concrete and everything, but then we don't think of it as something very pretty. We just, like Parth said, that it just becomes the default structural material. Like, like even when we think of using concrete for, like, okay, not for design projects, like when we think of it also, it just by default it happens that, okay, it'll be used for the structural system, but like in order to add aesthetics to our building, maybe we'll use, like, brick or wood or anything else. Like, even if, like, steel is also a structural material, but then when we use that, we always think of it like for aesthetic sense also. Sometimes, like, maybe visible trusses or something like that. But like, it just never happens with concrete. At least, like, I haven't seen any of the projects done like within our AD semesters only, not only mine, but whoever's I saw. It just always becomes a structural material to get a form, but like never for aesthetics.
No, I think the reason for that is because at your age, okay, you learn the third year of architecture, and of course we are giving you a lot of inputs in the IDS this plus the allied this lecture series which is happening, which is quite it is very good, which is introducing you all to various materials. The problem is that you don't look at concrete as a material to create space. You don't look at structural elements which are actually talking about space making elements. You don't look at the width of it and the thickness of it and the size of it and the height of it as an element to kind of articulate space. If you start looking at that, and I know how many of you all think, you'll say, oh, concrete का building करने का है, अच्छा 6x6 का grid डालो and 230 by 230 या 300 by 300 column डालो on that grid and the building will stand. But if you say no, what if I think of a double volume? What if I think of the quality of light? What if I think of something else? Automatically, you will not do the 6x6 grid as a kind of normal span for concrete. You will think of it differently. Okay, and the question is, you have to have a position. You have to have a position. Just look at it when you'll go shopping. Okay, when you'll go shopping. Okay, when you go shopping, you'll have something in mind. I need this kind of wear for college, or I need it for a marriage, or I need it for a birthday party, or I need it to play a sport. Okay, if you have that position in mind that this is what concrete should do for the space, okay, whether it's a congregational space or whether it's a prayerful space or whether it's a space which has to be used as an institution, what is the kind of nature you want for that concrete, everything will change. Unfortunately, at that age, okay, now that I've lost all my hair, I can tell you this. But if you'll start thinking of it at this early age, you will, when you accept a structural engineer's drawing, which it comes to your table, you will say, I don't want this. I don't think this is required. I think this is there. And you can only debate with him if you have a knowledge of forces, etc., etc. So I think it's very important that you need to have a position about a material, whether it's steel, concrete, wood, whatever, and you don't look at it just as a cladding material. You understand spatially what is it doing to your project, and then you see how you look at the material very differently. Yeah, like you can span 18 meters if you want. Like you can see what's happening in our college. They're about 15, 16 meters span, and you see those huge columns and you see those huge beams which go across. But is that the best way to do it? I don't know. But if you have a position, like I said, it'll change.
So
it's very important. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to add something to that, Ainsley, and what Devishi said. I think it's a very important point, right? So to not just put it in the context of only concrete, I think it's again going back to the larger conversations we're having. And if you're looking at technologies, right? So if you said if you're thinking of steel, then you're much more conscious of the material, right? Whereas concrete is a material you're less conscious of. And I think similarly, like, other technologies also. So now, for example, there is something called CLT, which is coming into the thing, which is a cross laminated timber. Now, these are technologies which are there for construction, for spanning, for architecture. And you need to become conscious that when you're conceptualizing, if you look at concrete and understand concrete as a material and its properties, and then what are the possibilities, even when you conceptualize a project, you will be then be aware of that, so then how you kind of bring that into your conceptualizing of your project. And that's, if you become aware of that and then you start practicing it over the years, hopefully in 2-3 years when you're out and then you're just going to be much more conscious about this and better at it.
And you should not go by default. You should not go by what is the known. You should actually, if you conceptually have a great idea, just try to push for that. And you'll believe me, if you don't know your, like we have been sitting as architects who practice, we have been sitting in meetings and there are jerks of people who sit around the table. Okay. And if you don't know your stuff, they can take you for a ride. He will say, I am an graduate from NMIMS and I do my MBA kind of a thing. And if you buy this material from there, it'll cost you that much cheaper. I've been telling you this time and again. And you'll be stumped if you don't know how to defend that. Okay. So, I mean, and the client will just look at you and say, what do you have to say to that? So you have to be sharp, you have to be quick, you may have to be quick in your thinking. You should have a damn good reason why you're doing a particular thing. Imagine Korea doing that and someone comes up and says, "Arey, ek flat roof dalo, ho jayega kaam." Okay, you can imagine what that space would be. Okay, so you have to be thorough about why you want to do it, conceptually strong, and then have the technology and the mindset to kind of resolve it so that it is affordable, it is acceptable to the client. Otherwise, you're just going to have fights every time. I mean, believe me. I mean, I don't know if you've seen some of Kaid's work. Have you seen Kaid's work, or you don't want to see his work? He's done that institution where these columns go at different angles and on the ground. I actually wanted to put that image and project which I've already shown you all, where I did those two columns the other way. That's the little experiments we are doing.
What are you talking about? Which project are you talking about?
The school which you have done. The stilt area.
The Kadapa one, or we've done.
Yeah, Kadapa.
Okay.
I don't remember the name, but yeah. The block on top and the columns which hold that.
Okay.
But have you all seen Kaid's work or no? Not interested. Very sad. You all are getting great people to teach you all, and you're all getting the lousy fellows. What is this, Sana? You're disappointing. You all must know what your faculty do, na? Otherwise, you can challenge Kaid and say, why you did this? Let him tell his story.
Well, don't go and search people. You should do that. What Ainsley is saying. I mean, it's a good.
Yeah, you'll understand it, and imagine you're interacting one-on-one with an architect, and there's so much learning, and he'll tell you the stories and the issues which he faced. I mean, like what I did with you all in IDS. I showed you all that structural plan, and I showed you how he drove me mad. But I mean, that's what this is all about. I mean, you must do it to all. There's Vandana, there's all these people who are practicing with you. You please ask them, catch Vandana and say why you did this. Anyway.
Stalk your faculties.
Sorry?
Stalk your faculties.
Yeah, I mean it's good, and there's a learning now, and you can ask them questions. It's like we have no problem. Yeah, Ritika, RS. Who's RS?
Ritika.
I have to move. I have to meeting. So do you want to end or you want to continue? Because otherwise
I can end. I mean, they're kind of fed up of me. I'll be getting to them in the next 8 weeks. Nah? Any more questions? Any more questions? Good. I think next time you all should do 5 and then they have to nominate 5 more. So you'll get 10 people talking. But anyway, we had more questions this time. Luckily, I reduced this thing. So it's like you tag someone else.
No, the conversation is triggered off by the 4-5 people and more jump in. That's the very nice thing.
Okay, that's good. That's good. But you should really participate more. But it's good anyway. Yeah. But please visit these projects. There are lots of YouTube videos. You'll see more, and maybe some of this can have an influence on your coaching project. Anyway, thanks a lot.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Ainsley.
Thank you. Bye. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye. See ya.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.